Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the advantages of the use of Ngrx over services in Angular. Our guest speaker this evening is Chikako Wakishima of SEDC in Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Jennifer Ponder. I'm located in Atlanta, Georgia. I am the Front-End Leadership Fellow at Women Who Code. Our speaker this evening, Chikako Wakishima, she is from Japan. She moved here to study 3D graphic art at University of Georgia. After being a graphic designer for a while, she moved on to web development using C# and apps.net. She has been a developer for 14 years. For the last 2 years, she has been focusing on Angular development, and currently she is working in a team of AngularJS and Angular migration at SEDC in Atlanta, Georgia. Now we're going to move on to our Women Who Code mission, which speaks to inspiring women to excel in technology careers. Our vision is a world where women are represented as technical executives, founders, VCs, board members, and software engineers. Also, please take a look at our code of conduct here. We do want to foster and build a community full of collaboration and inclusion. So please make sure to reach out to us if this is something that you are not seeing. Definitely send an email over to us at frontend@womenwhocode.com. And of course, you can take a look at the full code of conduct also at womenwhocode.com/code of conduct. Now, just to let you know about Women Who Code Front-End, if this is your first time tuning in and first time being with us, you know you can register for events at www.womenwhocode.com/front-end. Also, you can become a member just by clicking on that join button, all from that page as well. Also, again, our email, frontend@womenwhocode.com. If there's any topics that you'd like us to cover, anything that you'd like to see, definitely reach out to us. Also, if you have any webinar ideas and you'd like to do a webinar with us, definitely send an email over to us. Also, you can find us on social media, on Twitter, of course, at WWCode Front-End, and also on Instagram, WWCode Front-End1, and we do have Slack available. And if you do notice you have any issues with Slack, please let us know. We'll definitely get you out a Slack invitation. Of course, just email your name and also your email address to frontend@womenwhocode. So now, without further ado, I'd like to have our guest speaker, Chikako Wakishima, do her presentation this evening.
Thank you for coming to attend this meeting today. My name is Chikako Wakishima. I'm an Angular front-end developer and a Pharma.NET C# developer. I'm originally from Japan and came here to study graphic arts. Well, that plan didn't turn out, and now I'm a software developer. I'm also a mother of 8 years old. So advantages of the use of Ngrx over services in Angular. So I came up with this material a little while ago at my company. At my company, we have a main large application that is written in AngularJS and MVC. My team's task is to convert that into Angular application, but still keep those at the phase 1 of our release. So in the app, we can access the view model via very large global variable and then use it inside of Angular app. Then we first started to write with regular services that keep the models around for as long as application is running, but soon we realized that it's not maintainable. We are planning on moving the view models to REST endpoint eventually, so to make the transition smooth and to have our view model data in organized way, so we can access anytime and from anywhere we want, we thought Ngrx was the best tool we could use. But we had to first make sure that our bosses understand that. Questions we got was, why Ngrx is better than well-written services? I know people talk about how good Ngrx is, but we really want to know what benefit does that bring in contrast to downside like learning curves. That's why I put together this material and showed several advantages. But then I realized that I actually learned a lot myself from researching. That's why I thought maybe I will present this to other developers who might be searching for real advantages of using Ngrx, just like I was. Have you heard people talk declarative and imperative way of coding? When I first heard this and had that definition, I didn't understand what that meant. Imperative programming is like do something, and declarative programming is more like what you do. A declarative approach, what? Table 4.2, please. The imperative approach is, this is how I am actually going to get a seat. I've heard that before, but what does code really look like? And I'm saying declarative and is or pull way. Push, declarative, better and new way. You push the data through stream of observables to components. When something changes in data, components receive the changes automatically. Pull, imperative and old way. Components subscribe to the observable exposed on services that may fetch data HTTP client. The change that we'll receive is usually once when it returns back endpoint.
Chikako, are you showing your slides because we can't see them?
Oh, you're not seeing this slide?
No, if you could press share at the bottom.
Oh, okay. I thought I did. Oh, I forgot to click on the final button. Sorry about that. So yes, this is a push or pull. Can you see now?
Yes, and if you'll just go in presentation mode.
Okay, great. Can I just go in this mode? It's kind of like easier for me to.
Okay, yeah, totally. That's fine,
right.
Certainly.
All right, great. Okay, so traditional approach. Let's say you are creating user management system, and on the first page, let's say user dashboard page, you want to show all users and student users. So this is kind of like a mini application that I came up with. So let's imagine that we are creating this in the pull way. This is actually done in push way because that's what I wanted to coding. So this is like, so now it's like you have all users and you have students who are also users, and then some users are students. So an example of traditional approach, pull code, inject services into component, describe when we need data, implementation and massaging of data is in component. So here is the pull way, the traditional way which clutters the component a lot. So if you see this is very traditional way that some people might be used to. With traditional approach, we need to create a service with method. So we injecting this user service here and creating a method get users, and it probably does the HTTP get and then receives the users, and then you will probably have the users and student users array, which is local arrays which keeps track of the states in this component, and then that are only useful for this component. And then you do get users. Once you receive the data users, then you assign the users to users, and then student users who is only users who are student, advanced student users, which is student users who are student. You would do something like this. And then what happens if you have a button that says add a student and then pop up a dialog, and you can say a new student user. So it's like this. And I have this default name and last name populated as Steve Harrington from Stranger Things. And you can probably choose the type of student or advanced student, and you click on it. And then it should basically reflect the changes should be reflected into this the list. So what you would do is you have save handler probably, and then you will need to call service to save the new user on the back end. So on the save student user, which is probably called on close of that modal dialog. And then you will receive the newly typed user from the user input. And then you will call the save student method, which will go do HTTP post. And then upon on success of the HTTP call, then you will keep track of again the users and student users, the two lists. And also important to note that these subscriptions right here for this kind of approach, you need to keep track of subscriptions here. That's because the components are subscribing to observables, and we need to unsubscribe them when components gets destroyed. Otherwise, this will lead to memory leak. So this is very important when you subscribe to observables from components. So you keep track of this. And then upon on destroy the life cycle, Angular life cycle, you would do unsubscribe for each of them. So now, for example, another maybe business requirement happens. And now what will happen if you have a new requirement that you need to keep track of advanced students? So then you need to create another array called advanced students. Right here, a newly introduced array. And then on init, you will probably have to do this. And then on save student users, you will probably have to do, if the user is advanced student, then push it to advanced student. So this is another way that's for doing keeping track of arrays that needed to use for the markup HTML page. And also, this is important part. Please don't forget about this error handling. So when you do save student and subscribe, this might throw error because this goes to HTTP endpoint. Then the server side might throw error or network error might happen. So it's important to do error handling. But if you do this way, as when I first did this, I was forgetting this. So at this on init part, I forgot to do this error handling. And then the on save student, I remembered, so I wrote this. And so this is really important because in Ngrx.js, if error is thrown and there's no error handling placed, what happens is it stops emitting observable next time altogether. So you must handle errors when using Ngrx.js. If you use Ngrx, Ngrx has some good boilerplate that will make you remember to handle it easily. So I'll get to that when I show Ngrx code. Okay, so then as a part of a new requirement, so yet another new requirement, you will need to create a new page with a list of advanced student and student list, like this. Then you will provide with drag and drop functionality with those lists to move student to advanced student, or vice versa. This page is called Edit Advanced Student page. In the new page, you will need to have two arrays. So you're gonna have to have yet another two arrays. Regular students and advanced students. Also, it's probably better to expose in the service called get student users. That's because you're gonna have to fetch the student users from the endpoint. You have to probably expose this and only get student users and then forget about users, all users, because this is more efficient that way. But yet you have to have another students, the method, and also probably endpoint as well. Okay, and then if you are using drag and drop UI component, most likely you will have to implement on drop left and drop right. In our case, it will be on advanced student drop and on regular student. And then what you would do is, since you have to keep track of each array on advanced student drop, you receive the user and then remove it from regular student. So as you can see here, and then update the user, because this is advanced student now, update the user and push it to advanced students array. And on regular student drop, you will do the reverse of it, remove from advanced student, update the user, and push it to regular students. Then you will prompt the button to save the changes to the list. So at the end, you will have, basically merge the two arrays, and then save this updated student on the REST endpoint. So as with this approach, every time you go to either one of the pages, you need to have a trip to HTTP REST endpoint to get updated list of users and student users. I mean, of the regular student and advanced student. These edits are made from both pages, so you have to fetch the updated list here and also here. And in both pages, students, users, advanced users won't be rendered until the service gets responses from the back. This results in giving end users sluggish experience depending on the back-end API speed. So basically, this gets initiated when the component starts and it's empty. And every time on init happens, it's still empty, and the browser or DOM won't change until this user comes back from the REST endpoint. So this can be better with Ngrx. So I'm going to show you what the experience would be between the difference would be between the pull way and Ngrx way. So this is not from this this demo app, but this is, I just borrowed this GIF from the one of the Medium author called Alex Okurushko. One on the left is a traditional way. Oh, well, let me explain. Ngrx can solve this issue. So one on the right is Ngrx. So if you use Ngrx store, the users list is already in the store. So as long as components listen to the stored selectors, then they will display information using the store data first. Then after fetching the data from HTTP request, then it will update them. So one on the left is traditional way. On the right is Ngrx. As you can see, one on the left waits to render DOM till it gets the data from backend. On the right goes ahead and renders the list using the store data. Then after HTTP gets the updated data, it updates the store, which in turn updates the list with new data from the backend. So one with Ngrx gives user impression of instant refresh experience. But you might be wondering if you can do this caching mechanism with just the services. In fact, you can. Something called behavior subject and subject, which can emit observables when there is a new value. So the component can listen to those subjects and emit with the new data when they receive from backend. But then, if you do this way, you will have a bunch of methods in a service. Some fetch data from backend. Some method might be using subject to emit another subject. A part of a component might be listening to subject directly. Some might be listening to methods. Some even might be getting the value from value property on the subject. It gives too much freedom to do whatever you do. So you can write the declarative code without using Ngrx. However, this will be very difficult to maintain, and enforcing writing services in a certain way will be nightmare. Especially this will be hard if you work with many teams developing entire enterprise application. So what would component look like with Ngrx? An example of declarative approach, push code. Components subscribe to observable that are stream of data via subject or Ngrx store selectors. The user dashboard component will look like this. So it will have users observables and student users and advanced use students. And they are listening to basically a stream of data comes from the store. So listening to selectors right here. And then I call these guys right here, 3 guys, are 4 sets of streams, because it kind of feels like 4 sets because that's the end of the streams. And whenever some changes happens, these are the ones who receives the new data change. And also this push way, remember the subscriptions that I had to have for pull way of coding to basically get destroyed at the end for unsubscribing them. So I don't need to have this. Since we are not directly subscribing to observables in the component.ts, we will need to destroy them. The secret is async pipe. So in the markup, I do the users, this is observable that gets receives the changes from the Ngrx store. Then I use the async pipe. This is as users, this actually cast this observables of array, users array into regular users array. And you can use it as if just a regular array. So when you use async pipe, when components are out of scope, the subscriptions created with async pipes will automatically destroy themselves. So that's another reason why you would want to use Ngrx to take advantage of these async pipes. So if you look at this, you don't see anywhere that's loading users. So where am I loading the users then? In fact, since state is moved to all central area, which is Ngrx store, you can load users anywhere in the application. It doesn't need to be from component. The store state is accessible from anywhere in the app. So in fact, I'm loading it from app.component.ts. It's right here. But when I load, I just have to tell store, please use it. That's all I have to do. So if you look at the app, so I have all this header here. So when the reason why I had to, I decided to do it from the app component is because it feels like naturally fits there. That's because in this demo project, I will not update actual backend data. So every update I make will be memory. That means each component will go fetch the data on init. Is either this or this. Then it will wipe out the update that are made from the other page. Because I don't want to load it from the backend, because I'm not making a changes to the backend in this demo. So that's why I thought the upload component.ts is the perfect place for this demo. In production apps, this will not be the case. In production code, there are different theories on where you want to dispatch the load data actions. If you like to read about it more, there's a link at the end of the slide. So if you go back to upload component.ts, I'll put the on-save student user here. And that's because my header in upload component.ts is the one who is opening the model dialog box. So if you go in here, so this header is actually residing in upload component.ts. So this is the one it's actually opening the component. So and then so it's possible to handle it there because of Ngrx. I simply put it there. So I'm just doing on-save student, and then I'm just dispatching, I want to add a student. But so all I have is one code, dispatch add student action with student object as a parameter. Remember the poor approach of handling this? So in the poor approach, what I'm doing is, so when I receive the user from the save student user, I'm actually telling it to save this at the back end and then keep a track of 3 arrays here. And then on top of that, I'm trying to do error handling. Before approach, we had to keep track of 3 arrays that are only useful to component that declares them. In Ngrx or push approach, HTTP call and data updates and error handling are all made in Ngrx store. All component needs to do is to dispatch the action that they want to take. All components needs, remember the definition on push and pull approach that I showed earlier that didn't make too much sense. So in here, all components need to do is to tell what they want to do and not how they want to do. But in pull approach, it's doing how they want to do it. So this is the definition. Imperative programming or pull approach is like how you do something, and declarative programming is more like what you do. So now it makes more sense with the difference in code between traditional way and Ngrx way. So this is true separation of concern. Presentation layer only concerned about presenting data, and business logic is done in Ngrx. In fact, in my company, we moved our global Ngrx store to a library project since we have multiple apps that needs to read from the same global store and dispatch the same global actions. So what's going on in the store? In fact, in the store, there's only one important state called users. That is array of user. Also not so important now, but they are loading, loaded, and load error states. They are conventions that, but not being used yet in this demo app. See the users in this Redux tool here. So if you can see the users here. Loaded in here. So another very useful Ngrx provide is a hook to Chrome Redux Dev Tool, which is this one. With visual step-by-step action and state tracking feature, debugging is so much easier than traditional approach. So you can see how the user is loaded, and then the user, how it dispatches load users, and then dispatches load users success, and then the users gets updated. So same thing, if I drop this, then now edit advanced student is the action is happen, and then the user here gets changed right here. So you can see visually on the Chrome browser. So in this, yeah. So how the app is able to show 3 arrays if you only have users array state? The secret is in Ngrx selectors. I think the selectors are like views in SQL database. The source is in the store state, but you have different views of the state. So you have the user state, get user state, and select user only gets the one that's stored in the store. And you create a selector for users, which is part of the users, and it takes in the function, and then all I'm doing is basically filtering it and returning only the student users. Same thing as advanced student, it's based on the student users, and then just returning only the advanced student. And the regular student is the reverse of the advanced student. Look at the selector reference. It's reference from user dashboard component and then edit advanced student component. What I called faucets are referencing them. They are the references. Selectors are very smart because if users state what to change, for example, when most user is added to users array, then all 3 selectors that are depending on the user state will emit and notify the faucets or listeners of the change. So if the user it's gonna be changed, and then since this is depending on this users, and then since these are on the students, so in turn, all of them emit Another smart part about the selectors is that they have own caching mechanism. If none of the selectors parameter have not changed, and then it will use the value that was used last time to emit. So it skips computing in case the parameter or input didn't change. So what happened is the components needs student users, but the select user didn't change. And then instead of doing this computation, what selector does is it remembers the last value emitted. And as long as the input hasn't changed, it can just return the last emitted value. So this is called the memoized function. So that's why it's called memoized selector. When you look at it, it's called memoized selector. So let's quickly look at from the top to bottom. So I'll show you this little bit of a folder structure here. I have this components here, just like the traditional way, and then models and services. And then this right here is where I store everything in the store here. And in Ngrx. And also, let me tell you about how the Ngrx, the cycle of Ngrx is. In Ngrx, action happens, then reducer reacts to the action, then change the state. Then the effect also reacts to the action next, but reducer is always first. Then the selector reacts to the state changed by reducer, then component receives the changes. Let me go back to the code. Upload component.ts dispatches load user's action, then the reducer changes the loading flag to true. So the load users gets dispatched, and the reducer is listening to this load users, and then change the loading to be true. Then effect reacts to it, and also the effect is listening to the same action right here, and then use the service to fetch the data. This is what they basically goes and fetch the data from endpoint, and in the traditional way, this was being used directly in the component. But in the Ngrx, we use it in here since we want to contain everything within the store. And then, if it succeed, dispatches load user succession with fetched user. If fails, dispatch the load user fail action with error. After load user success is dispatched. So another thing good to note here is the effect can also dispatch a new action. So then the reducer can react to the action that's dispatched by effect. So after load user success is dispatched, the reducer react and we'll update the state on user's array along with loading and loaded flag. So it's right here. And then before selectors will emit, that's because the user changed, therefore selector will emit and the components are happy. These two action patterns, success and fail for API action is so common that once you start writing Ngrx, you will not forget. Where catch error is written, this is where error handling is done for HTTP service, and that's where you need to always dispatch fail action. Remember in the pull approach, I was forgetting to write this. If you forget, the service will stop for any subsequent request. But with this Ngrx pattern, you are less likely to forget this than traditional approach. So let's take a look. Save student user now. So on save student user dispatches add student user action. Then the effect reacts to add student action. In case of this, it's also reducer is reacting to it also. But it's not too important in this case, but it's actually setting the loading to true. But effect is reacting to this add student. And then it uses service to send the HTTP post request. If success, it dispatches another reaction called add student success. And then on fail, it dispatches fail action. And then the reducer listens to this success and failure. Then updates the user and updates the error. In case of this, the only single student is basically sent down with the action. So then this is actually the performance ID generation is just put together here because we're not using the backend. But in a production app, that this will be this students should already have the ID that's generated by database or something. So you don't have to do this kind of things. But then all you have to do is just append the student and then to the existing users. And in case of this syntax is a ES6 syntax, and it's actually returning a immutable array. And this is something to note that in Ngrx, when you do a reducer, you always want to return the immutable object. And I'm going to get to that soon. So then if you go to another page, like, so we are doing save student pop-up and then saved it. But if you go to another page, like edit advanced student, this page too gets updated. Updated data. That's because they are listening to the same selectors. They have 4 sets that are listening to the same selectors. So therefore, no need to have local variables and keep updating the arrays inside of the components. And no need to subscribe to service method from each component. Just need to have observable variables that are 4 sets of the strings from the store, and the data will be pushed when they change. We can even do drag and drop. So if you go here, the regular student, I put myself as a regular student. So if you see this here, she is user and not student. This is not advanced student. I can move this to advanced student, and change is reflected in here. I can move her back here, and change is reflected. And to point out even more important benefit of using Ngrx, so what happens if the business requires this? Yet another business requirement change. If the business requires us to now change the advanced student means not only just having its advanced student flag to be true, but also they need to be a user for longer than a year. So that means with a traditional pull approach, you need to go to the components, then edit everywhere that have reference to advanced students. So in case of user dashboard, in the pull approach, that means you need to change it here to be advanced student means student users filter, advanced student, and also user joined on is less than the current day 1 year. And also on the on-save student user, that's where pop-up close dialog stuff. If the user is advanced student, flag on, and also basically if it's joined on is less than a year ago, then so you have to add it here too. And then in case of advanced student, it will be here. So the demo app has only 3 components, but for pro app, we're going to put us in trouble since there are going to be a lot of more code to modify because of this new business requirement. But as we all know, the day will come because business requirements always change. With Ngrx push approach, all you need to do is go into the selector, change the align from 2 of the selectors, and all components who have 4 sets to this selector streams get correct data pushed. So it's easy to find where it will be, and so we don't have to change anything in the component. But we might have to a little bit, but not like poor way. So in here, select advanced students and do a joined on is less than 1 year. And select regular student would be if it's not advanced student, or if it's advanced student, but make sure this person is actually only joined within the last year, then he or she is a regular student. So this is a lot easier compared to traditional pool way in which we are going to have to hunt down every single advanced student implementations from all components. So Ngrx gives you a peace of mind and don't have to freak out about the business requirement change. So now, next up is change detection and how Ngrx can improve apps performance. Change detection is means updating the DOM whenever data is changed. So change detection strategy on push or change detection strategy default. So on push strategy improves performance by minimizing the change detection cycles. So you can specify on push on this decorator here of the component. Yeah, and with the concept of dummy component and smart component and use of push architecture, on push strategy is easily achievable. With pull approach, this can be difficult. With on push, the component is only checked for changes when at input value property changes, or an event emit, or a bound of emits. The third criteria means the bound with async pipe in the HTML markup. So and users async as users. This is the markup that I've shown you a little while ago in Ngrx code. With the default change detection strategy, if an event fired somewhere in this component tree, all components change detection fires. And the images are provided by SoftGraph.io. But why does Angular do that? Why does Angular do this? Like unnecessary, seems to be unnecessary detection cycle, because if something, why does everything has to change? Because in JavaScript, object is mutable by default. For Angular to know whether or not it needs to update DOM, it needs to know if data has changed. If we are passing mutable object into input variable, Angular cannot tell if the object properties have changed or not. So if you have, this is a parent component, and if you have a child component, and in case the child component have the change detection strategy default, and then you can do this way because it kicks in the change detection anyway, no matter what, if the person object reference hasn't changed. So you can write this way. And then on click, you just mutate this object by doing this. But that's because on the change detection strategy default. But if you want to take advantage of on push strategy and have less change detection cycle, you need to write immutable, because then you can use this on push strategy, change detection on push strategy inside of this child component. But to do that, you have to basically do, when you do on click, this person, and then you have to assign the brand new object. So then this input variable is has a brand new reference. Knows, oh, so this is a brand new reference. I need to do the change detection on this component. So if you use on push strategy in this case of this, the DOM will not refresh. If you use immutable object for input variables, Angular can tell that reference has changed and needs to update DOM without unnecessary detection cycles. If reference does not change, it doesn't need to do detection for the rest of the remaining tree, as you can see in the picture on the left. Ngrx helps us write with immutable objects. In fact, if you accidentally mutate object, it throws an error during runtime. And there is also a useful NPM library called Ngrx store freeze, which prevents mutated and throws compile time errors. So in summary, Ngrx is a great way of coding because it helps us think in declarative way when we code. We don't need to maintain component level state. And its caching feature is great. Easy to remember error handling. With Redux Dev Tool plugin on Chrome, debugging is a piece of cake. With its natural immutable way, we get performance gain. So that's the end of my talk.
All right. Thank you so much, Chikako, for that presentation. We want to open the floor up for any questions. You all can put those in the chat, and definitely we'll read those off. And we're going to just give a few minutes just for some questions. And if you all, you know, just anything you want to ask Chikako about her experience as in development with Angular and about the Ngrx store or anything of that nature, definitely we're going to give a few minutes for that. And and also, if there's some questions you can't think of right now and you happen to think of them later, definitely you can email those over to us at frontend@WomenWhoCode. And also you can put them in the Slack channel. We'll definitely get those over to her. So we're just going to give a few minutes. Chikako, I do want to ask you, what has been the most challenging about working with Angular? If you've noticed any challenges you've had to look back over and how you overcame those challenges, what would you say that would have been for Angular?
Well, Angular to me is pretty intuitive. It has been pretty like a fun experience learning Angular actually. To be honest, but there's some like you know, like maybe some error messages that aren't really you know, straightforward. And then,
Okay.
but you just have to kind of like, I don't know how to Google it, right? And then whenever like you Google the right error messages, or, you know, like you can kind of guess that the keyword that people would likely to search for.
Sure, definitely.
Right, you know, like usually, right, you end up getting into this, like, you know, the answers or workaround, or like maybe actually, you know, you might be doing something wrong, but when you know, read the Stack Overflow, the GitHub, you know, repo, or any the issues that
Mhm.
they have, and then some of them are closed, some of them are still open,
Sure.
and has to put a comment on it, and then you kind of start to feel like, I don't know, you are part of the community. Kind of like,
Sure, yeah.
yeah. So,
Well,
yeah.
that's cool. And also too, do you have any resources that you can share with our community just for people who are learning Angular or continuing to build their skill set? Any favorite ones that you have?
Yes. So I have this. Do you still see my screen?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. So I put together this learning resources here for Ngrx. Best learning resource I had was this ultimate course by Todd Motto. He's the, I think it was 2 years ago, he was a speaker at NGCon. And his classes, you know, online classes are great. Like, I mean, a course, you know, great. And I think I learned the most out of his course. And in fact, actually, my company is giving his, you know, course to everybody at my company.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome.
And then other things are like I watched the Pluralsight, and also this GitHub repo for actual Ngrx platform. And then they have example apps. So, you know, if you look at them, and then they are really good at keeping up to date with the brand new version. Like, so the syntax sometimes changes, or, you know, like there's a new way of writing the, you know, Ngrx code, which is much simpler than the old. And then if you're writing older way, it still works, but you want to use the newer way because it's much simpler, kind of thing. So to keep up to date with that kind of a trend, then you can go to Ngrx platform, and then that's where you can actually see the most recent way of writing code.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for that. And also, we do have a question coming in from Sunitha Patel. The question is, when you used Ngrx in your application, did you inject the store directly everywhere that Ngrx state was needed? Or did you make use of the, I want to say facade or facade? Would that be facade?
Yeah, Sunisa, I know. I used
Okay.
to.
Okay, to hide, and the additional part here, to hide the use of Ngrx behind something else and then inject, did you say that was
Facade, yeah.
facade? Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes I use facade, and if you start to clutter a lot in the, because you have like a faucet stream that I explained to you, and it gets so much, and then you have to initiate that at your constructor. And then sometimes you need to dispatch actions, and you have to dispatch action in a certain way. But if you use the facade, facade is basically injectable service, but in a basically it's wrapper layer. You can remove the you know, basically the store, calling a store, or, you know, getting a faucets out of the component, but you just have to basically call the facade method, and the method will call the, you know, dispatch actions, and sometimes as a group. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, did we have any more? We're still checking for questions now. I do have some closing updates for you all before we close out this evening. Just want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to ask a question to Chikako before our end tonight. Definitely, as I stated before, if you can't remember all your questions or any comments or any additional resources or anything for GitHub too with Chikako, definitely you know, of course, you can place them in Slack and also email them to us. So
Yes.
we're just gonna check here. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead, Chikako, I'm gonna take over sharing my screen again, just so I can share these closing updates for the evening with you all.
Yes. Yeah, I'd like to thank you, everybody, too. Thank you so much for today's webinar, and I hope this webinar was helpful and informative to you. Please shoot me an email, Slack, or tweet if you have any questions or feedbacks. So I put the reference links and repo links along with links to learn more about Ngrx on the slide. So please feel free to poke my repo and Stack Blitz and play around with them. And thank you to people who works at Women Who Code for having me for today's webinar and inspiring us every day. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Chikako, and also Sunita said thank you as well. Great presentation, very detailed and well prepared. And now what we're going to do is just go over some last minute information here with you all. Now, we have some new events, of course. If you haven't, if this is your first time tuning in with us, just want to let you know of the events that we have on Front End. Our Slack Front End Friday study group, that's every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we do have some topics, but we do have a free-for-all where you can come in, ask questions, help each other, collaborate on different things. So that definitely goes on then. Also, Twitter Tech Chat every first and third Tuesday of the month. That's at 2 p.m. as well, where we talk about anything from lazy loading to chatbots, AR, VR, mixed reality as well. So anything that's going on that's trending in web development, we like to discuss it with the Tuesday Twitter Tech Chat. Also, August, of course, you know, this is Angular month. We're going to be sharing Angular content and resources all month. And also the 2019 Women Who Code Front End Track Summit is coming up. That's October 12th in Berlin, Germany. You can go on to submit a CFP or volunteer at frontend.womenwhocode.dev. We're looking for lightning talks, tech talks, any code lab, workshop ideas. Definitely submit those, or if you know anyone in your network who would love to speak, definitely go ahead and let them know about that. And also, tickets are going. You know, you can go ahead and buy your tickets right now. We'd love to see you there at the summit as well. And also, too, you know, just for the evening, we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to take a look at the website and just go over some things and look at some ideas for different talks as well. Give me just a second here. And also, we'd like to thank our track sponsors this evening, BCG Digital Ventures and the Home Depot. Thank you so much. And also, thank you for watching this presentation this evening. So again, if there's anything, any questions you all may have, definitely reach out to us in Slack and also Front End at Women Who Code. And thank you again. We'll see you online soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
You too.